And a typical approach to this would be, as we look at the information, for example, in row 2, we would like to see in cell D2, Baker, comma, space, Mark, space, S, period. So we need to pull together information from different locations. Two broad approaches to this. One is a function called concatenate, and another is using what's called the concatenation symbol, the ampersand above the number 7 key on most keyboards. Let's talk about concatenate first. This is pulling together information from different sources. And we see it in the list here. We could just click here, tab, concatenate, and it simply suggests text 1, text 2, a whole series of entries, some of which will come from existing cells, some of which will come from text strings that we put in with sets of double quotes. So we need to get the information for the last name, that's right here, comma. The next thing we need to follow Baker is the text string of comma and space. This needs to be embedded within double quotes. And then a comma to indicate we put in that information. Now we need to get information from cell A2. And typically following the first name, Mark, we would want to see a space. So we put in Mark in this case. Now we need to put in the text string, simply a space. And after this, another comma. And we need to put in the middle initial. And we want to put in, after that, a period. Double quote, period, double quote. And we see that entry. And let's test it out on a few cells. And we've got a little problem, it looks like. Hanson, comma, Sheila, with a trailing space. So we don't really want that period all the time. What are we going to be doing here? If cell C3 is blank, how are we going to change the logic here? One approach is to insert an if. You could do it right here to say if that cell is blank, or phrase another way, if it's not blank, we do want to put the period in. If it is blank, we don't want to put the period in. So what essentially do we do here? How about an if function right here, right in the middle of this? Check to see if this particular cell right here. If it is blank, we want to see nothing. If it's not, we want to see the period. A function you may or may not be aware of is a function called is blank. Is cell C2 blank? Is the logical test here, comma. If it is, what do we want to see here? Nothing additional. The null string is sometimes called double quote, nothing at all. In all other situations, when it's not blank, we want to see the period. And so this is an if function inside of concatenate, right parenthesis. First situation, we don't know yet if it's going to be working. Check it out on a few cells. It appears to be working. And from here, you could just drag it downward. There we go. And so that's one way to pull together information from different locations, the concatenate function. And you don't always need this, of course, with the if function. Now, that may or may not be your preference, but the other choice here would be not to use concatenate, but simply to use the symbols. And this situation here might just work off of this and by editing instead of this. And you can see the plus will be that we don't need this long function name here, but we do need to put in the ampersand repeatedly. And so we'd like to see B2 and the comma space. And you see what's happening here for the most part, replacing those comma separators with the ampersand. So we got to put these in over and over and over again. And the rest of this should work properly. There we go. Now, I might compare this with the second one here, back and forth a little bit, or possibly just hit Control using the tilde symbol, which is usually on that key above the tab key, no shift key, to compare the two of them there. You see the top two in terms of length. That's not always the way to measure how difficult a function is, but you kind of see the two together and make a comparison. I tend to use the first example more than the second, but again, you can have your choices. Both of them get to the heart of the matter, and that's pulling together data from different sources. Let me hit Control tilde again to go back to a normal display. Whether you're using concatenate or the concatenation symbol, you can see how effective this is in pulling together information, not only from different locations, but by actually using text strings that are needed in these examples.